Okay, so I think it's time to start this second session. I'll give the floor to Professor Thomas for the introduction of the first speaker.
Yeah, our first speaker this session will be Lieven Baert. He will speak to us how to start your own company, because he started his own company, Jalima Pharma, about 10 years ago now. But he qualified as an industrial pharmacist with a PhD in pharmaceutical technology and an MBA, and then worked for about a number of years, I don't know exactly how many, at Janssen Pharmaceutica, in different positions of CMC and formulations, and then went on to Biotech, where he was responsible for novel dosage forms for antiviral drugs. And then, as I said, he started his own company in 2010, Jalima Pharma. It is a company specialized in new drug delivery platforms and consulting about that. Lieven, the floor is yours for how to start your own company. Thank you.
Thank you for your nice introduction. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I see you.
Oh, you see me, but not my screen. Okay. Then I have to share something different. Is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
So the title of my presentation today is How to Start Your Own Company. And I'm going to tell you the story how I went to that. Yeah. Right. Move. Okay. So as a first introduction, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself and how I ended up to start my own company. As an education, I'm a pharmacist by training. And during that two studies, I marked that being a pharmacist and being locked up, must I say, in a pharmacy, that was nothing for me. Yeah. So I decided to go in the direction of industrial pharmacy. And that was a good choice because that's something which I like more. Yeah. Production, analysis, all of these things, yeah, of drugs, yeah, not being locked up in a pharmacy. And during that study of industrial pharmacist, I was about working for that on 3 months. A professor in pharmaceutical technology from University in Ghent, he asked me to come and do a PhD. So I combined the studies of industrial pharmacists together with making a PhD in pharmaceutical technology. And after those 3 studies, I went to Canada, to Merck Sharp & Dohme, where I was an industrial visiting scientist for a year. So I had quite some experience outside of the country, which helped me a lot. And then I returned back to Belgium and I started my career at Janssen Pharmaceuticals. I was at Janssen for 10 years, where I held different positions. And what I saw during those 10 years is that I was coming from a scientist, what I loved the most, doing pharmaceutical technology, to a manager. And that's something I want to stress today is you start as a scientist, you love that, and you end up with a department of 40 people, yeah, doing project planning, budgeting, and HR, yeah. And then there is no time left anymore to do your pharmaceutical technology, what you like the most. So at a certain moment of my career, I switched from Janssen Pharmaceuticals to Biotech, which was from the same group. It was also from Johnson & Johnson. And there I was for 7 years, a kind of free electron. Yeah? I was able to come up with new ideas, new technologies, new delivery forms. That's what I like the most, being a scientist again. But then it was decided by Johnson & Johnson that the 2 groups in Belgium, being Janssen and Biotech, had to come together again. Yeah? And then I decided not to move back to Janssen, but to start my own company, being consultancy in pharmaceutical technology. Now, what is important is first I want to explain what is a company. Yeah? And a company is a legal entity. So it means it's not a person, it's a legal entity. And it has owners, and those owners are called shareholders. Yeah. So you can own a company and not work in that company. Yeah. And then I make it very simple, that it applies to every company, whether you're Pfizer, whether you're Jalima Pharma, or whatever. Yeah. It's money that goes in, it's goods that goes in, money that goes out, and a product that goes out. And what's done in between is added value. Yeah. That's the basics of a company, and that's important. In my case, those goods can be just information I got from companies, and the product out means advice, for instance. Yeah, the money in is what I gain. Yeah, the money out is what I spent with my company on buying a computer, a car, whatever. By having that company, you have a buffer between the money that comes in and the money that goes out, and that is important to know. How did I start that company? Can you just say, I started today and I'm call my company Jalima Pharma? It's not that the way it goes. In Belgium and in other countries, it's equivalent. Yeah? It can be different, I know that. Yeah, but you have to go to notary in Belgium, or in some other countries, it's something equivalent. And that's an instance which can create a legal entity. And then there are different possibilities for having that legal entity. You can have, in Belgium, for instance, a BV, an NV. It all depends on which level of capital you need and the liability. So level of capital, the money you need, and liability, how liable are you? In my case, for instance, I have a BV, which means that I need a little bit of capital, and this has recently changed since last year. You don't need capital anymore. And your liability is limited to the first 3 years, and after that, you have no liability anymore. So it's limited liability. And that's what is present in different countries. What else do you need is a financial plan. And a financial plan is not a business plan. I will explain later on the difference between a financial and a business plan. A financial plan is just saying, this is the money that will come in, and that's the money that will go out in my company. So it's an expectation of the financial items for the first 2 years. This is the minimal requirement you need in Belgium, a notary and a financial plan. What is nice to have, of course, is an accountant, because these are people. I'm a pharmacist, yeah. I'm not a specialist in accountancy, yeah. So I have a very good accountant, yeah, which helped me a lot for all those paperwork, yeah. Also for doing my all the work which I'm not interested. As I said, I like to be science, yeah, and not to do all the paperwork. But he helped me a lot on that. Besides that, what's also nice to have if you start your own company is a business plan. And since I'm starting now a second company, and I show you later in the presentation more about that, I'm preparing a business plan for that. And I will show you the headlines of that business plan without the details, of course. What is the cost of starting a company? In Belgium, it's about 3,000 euro. I put it that way. Yeah, my son, he started a company last year, and it costed him 3,000 euro. 1,500 euros for a notary and all the legal papers, and 1,500 euros for an accountant. That's about the price. It's just to have an idea. Yeah. And then, of course, this is just an example of a legal entity. Means at a certain moment, and sorry, this is in Flemish, I cannot help it, but there's official language here in Flanders, which is part of Belgium. But it's a legal document that describes, and it even can be found on the internet. You can find it in the internet in Belgium. That's not the case in all countries. But that document describes how your legal company is organized. And in my case, it's, for instance, my legal company has shareholders. Yeah, it's myself and my wife, who is also a pharmacist. Yeah, we are the shareholders of our company. What is also described in such a document is what your company can do. Yeah, from a legal point of view, your company can do, in my case, for instance, everything related to pharmaceutical products, cosmetics, diets, yeah, and other products. Yeah, but also can do other things like intellectual property. So you have to make it broad enough, but of course, nobody will allow you that you claim everything. Yeah. So you need to have a purpose of your company. Yeah, in the legal document. And then, and this is one of the other pages of that legal document, you have to indicate how the money, the capital, which you bring into the company, is divided and who has how many shares. My case, for instance, 10 years ago, I started with 18,600 euro as a capital. So it's money that I bring into my company. It stays in your company, so it's not gone. Yeah, it stays in your company. With that capital, you can do a lot of work. You can buy a PC, you can buy a car, rent a car. You have some money, yeah, operating money. Yeah, but it means that's the starting money you put in your company. And then in total, I have 12,000 shares, and 6,000 are from me and 6,000 from my wife. But that's important to know who is the owner from the company and who are the shareholders. This is one of the smallest possible companies you can go with two people. Big companies have sometimes hundreds of people, and if they're on stock markets, maybe even thousands of people. One of the first questions you will ask me then is, how much capital do I need to start a company? And in Belgium in the past, it was needed that you had some capital. When I started 10 years ago, I was obliged to have a capital of 18,600 euros. But now, in theory, in Belgium, you can start a company without capital. But in reality, I don't think it's a good idea. Yeah, because there will be never a bank who will give you some thousands euro, yeah, that you can have if you have no capital at all. Yeah? So it is nothing from yourself in that company, nobody will help you. But where can you get the money then? You can have it from yourself, but then you have to do some work already before you start company. You can have it, you can borrow it from family, friends, and fools. That's what they typically say. A starter starts with family, friends, and fools, yeah, who give you some money. You can go to the bank, but the bank will not borrow you much if your capital is very limited, because then they will say, what are the guarantees you're giving me? If you have, for instance, already a car in your company, you can give the car as a guarantee to the bank. Yeah. Also, the bank will ask you business plan, not a financial plan, but a business plan. What are you going to do with all the money? Yeah. What are your ideas? What is your focus? Yeah. Then another group of where you can get money are business angels. Business angels are people or small companies which invest in your company, and they want shares in exchange for money. That's basically what they want. Sometimes they also want to be part of your board. If you really need much more money, then you can go to investment companies, and that's for a larger amount of money, but they always want to be part of your board, and also they need shares. So the more money you would like to have, the less you have to say in your company. That's something you have to keep in mind. If you start your company where you have 100% of the shares, you have to be careful that after a few years, you don't end up with 3% of the shares and 97% of the shares in the investment company. Yeah? So those are things you have to think about, yeah, before you start working. And then the business plan. So I was talking about a financial plan, which you need to start, but the business plan is something different. This is when you start to collect much more money, and when you think, I want to do a real business. And at this moment, I have an example here, and you can, I'm willing to share it. It's a company that I'm starting. It's called Pharma for Children and Elderly. And what is the challenge with children and elderly is swallowing. As well, older people as small children, they have problems with swallowing medication. Yeah, everybody knows a big tablet, but how are you giving that to a child of 2 years? Yeah, it's a nightmare. Yeah, so we are thinking on systems, pharmaceutical technology-driven systems to have other possibilities of giving compounds to children. That can be, for instance, powders that can be dissolved, for instance. We are thinking, for instance, on amorphous solid dispersions, which need to be dissolved a few minutes before administration. We're also thinking on small beads, yeah? Non-parallel seeds, yeah? Coated with a drug, for instance, yeah? That you can put in some yogurt, yeah? Or in some choco, yeah? Those are some ideas we have for that new company. And what are then the topics in the business plan? And the business plan is nearly ready. Is what is the strategy of that company? Of course, and I was already explaining you what is the unmet medical need. Yeah, and I think it's a real example of the real world. Yeah, and that's why it's also a real company in the future. There is an unmet need for geriatric and pediatric formulations and medication. Of course, also in that business plan, you have to come up and discuss about competition. What can be your competition? Are there other people which are thinking on the same? And maybe I'm now creating my own competition, but I'm not afraid of that. Yeah. Yeah. What is your competition? Yeah. Who is in the same field? Yeah. Then core technologies of your company. And I was already mentioning a little bit, but I stayed very vague. Yeah. Because we have some patent applications running at this moment. Then the activities and the products that we will develop, we are making a selection out of drugs which are already existing, yeah, and also drugs which are under development, which are still patented. So what do we want to go for? In which fields do we want to go, for instance, with that company? New formulations for developing countries, yeah. And I have a large background in HIV drugs when I was working for Johnson & Johnson. We are looking at new formulations with off-patented drugs, new formulations of patented drugs. Yeah, the last one will be the most difficult, yeah, because then you have to take into account that the patents still belong to another company. Then also our business model and the development strategy. And then what is key to a lot of investors is who is your key management team and how is your company organized? Yeah, but especially your management team. Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, and we are in the phase that we are already collecting a few millions of euro for this. But it's mainly based on the management team and what they obtained so far. Then another question, and that's more than related to Jalima Pharma, my company. So forget about the new company that we are working on. It's not my own company. Who are your clients? How do you find them? And what is your competition? So what am I doing? What is Jalima Pharma specialized in? Is pharmaceutical development, drug product and drug process. Yeah, and that's the focus of what I'm doing. I told you I like to be a scientist, not a manager. Yeah, I was managing groups of 40 people. I was not interested in that. I wanted to do drug development, drug product, and process. Yeah, in which way? Problem solving, advice, project management, and project management, for instance, Daniele was referring to. Yeah, because he's involved with a project I'm also involved with, but I'm not going to say more than that. So that's what my company is offering. Who are my clients? And my clients are not only pharmaceutical companies, but also agriculture companies and cosmetics. Yeah, because as a pharmaceutical technologist, you know more than pharmaceutics only. Yeah. Also in agriculture, they need beads which are coated. Yeah. Also in cosmetics, they need pharmaceutical technology knowledge on emulsions. Yeah. on creams, etc. Who else do I have as clients? Government, for instance. If government want to spend money, around, for some projects, they need, someone who can review that, who is an expert in reviewing. The Flemish government and also the Belgian government is quite a lot asking me to review some of their projects. The same with investment companies. So if you go to an investor, be aware that your dossier maybe can end up in my company, that I have to review it, because those investors, they are clever guys, they have an advisor, consultant, to check whether the business plan, of a new company is worthwhile investing money in, so that's also one of my clients. And then of course courts, if there are discussions, I'm also quite a lot, they ask my advice, especially the European Court in the Netherlands. I have to go to in Den Haag, The Hague, but always focused on the product and the process. So if you have a problem with product and process, come and see me. How to find clients and competition, and that's a difficult one. How to find clients? If I was a student and I would start my own company, I typically would start with a website. My son has started this company last year. He's an engineer. The first thing he did was a website. In my case, but it's only in my case, I have no website, and that's on purpose. Why do I do that? Is if you have a website, you need a contact person, and then I will have too many people contacting me to sell their product to you. So your website is not publicity of yourself anymore, it's a source of a lot of work if you don't pay attention. Already know there are many people from all the world, and don't forget the internet is the world, which are contacting me all the day, all day long, with questions. Well, I want to sell you this, I want to sell you that, I want to sell you that. So if you have a website, be careful and be aware that you have a contact person and that you can spend a lot of money. If you like to do that, no problem for me. I don't like it and I don't need it. But I know typically you start with a website. But in my case, what is very important, but it's also important in whatever you do, and UNICA is one of those examples, you need to be networking, networking, and networking. Knowing people is so important. And I started networking when I was already at university. And those days it's even more easy to do networking with tools like LinkedIn. You have all the links of people and you change of positions, because in the past it was sometimes difficult to find someone back because he changed position, he went to another country, he went to another company. Those days the networking is important. For instance, in my LinkedIn network, I have about 100 people, and I know them all personally. So I don't accept links. So don't send me a link because I will not accept. Unless I know you. So networking is, to my opinion, the most important thing if you start with whatever company. Whatever company. Competition, that's a difficult one. It's always difficult to find a good equilibrium between competition and colleagues. I'm always saying I'm on speaking terms with the competition. So I never make any negative remarks about my competition. I never say anything negative. But I also don't want to be colleagues of my competition, because then maybe they run away with work where I'm interested. But having a good equilibrium is a good thing. And to be honest, my competition are more colleagues than real competitors. But we keep a distance, because otherwise you end up in trouble, with cartel formation and things like that. So that's basically it. If you want to ask questions, I think we have the chat forum then. and I will answer them at the end of the other presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Lieven. We will move on now, and I leave the introduction of Fabrizio to Luciano.
So thank you very much, Lieven, for the very interesting hands-on presentation. Now it's a pleasure to give the floor to Fabrizio Conicella, who is a General Manager of OpenZone and Zcube S.r.l. in Italy. Fabrizio has 25 years of experience in the field of innovation and technology transfer in the area of human health and life sciences, covering positions in project management, business development, and general management. His CV is very rich, but I will just focus on a couple of points which I think are interesting for this webinar. He has been Vice President of Innovap Association and President of the Italian Association of Science Parks. He has been, actually, when we met, he was a General Manager of the Bioindustry Park Silvano Fumero, who is an excellent institution in Italy. So it's a great pleasure to give the floor to you, Fabrizio, and he will give a talk on thinking beyond science, the creation of a startup as a way to exploit scientific results.
Thank you, Luciano. Good morning to everyone. I will try to share my screen. Let's check if I can do. Oops. That's it. Okay. Okay, I hope that you are seeing my presentation. Thank you, Luciano. Thank you to everyone. I will try my presentation to approach the issue to create a startup from a quite different perspective, less technical, more based on value and on the possibility to interpret also startup creation as a way to identify a solution for employability issues. I will start in presenting the Zambon Group. Zcube is part of Zambon Group. Zambon is a medium-sized pharma company located in Italy, around 700 million euro, and focused mainly on respiratory and neurodegenerative diseases. Inside the Zambon Group, as Zcube, we are managing, let's say, the open innovation component of the business, trying to identify solutions coming from university or from startups in respiratory and CNS, and with a special focus on the care part of the mission, not only on the cure part. It means that we are not working mainly on molecular and therapeutic solutions, but more on medical device and digital health solutions. The starting point of my presentation is the concept of knowledge. Scientists are trained to create new knowledge, to increase the stock of knowledge at worldwide level. It is clear that this is not the only mission of the scientists. I like really much such cartoon because it's synthesizing the task that a scientist has to perform. He has to study, he has to observe the nature, he has to listen, he has to share their idea, he has to conduct experiment, but he has also the goal to use the tools that are available to solve problems. Now the issue is how, because the one single experiment is not the solution of a problem. And this is particularly true in healthcare and life science, where we are working. We have a lot of problems, and the COVID pandemic demonstrated that we are not able to solve all the problems that are presenting at worldwide level in a really effective and rapid time. And there are really few solutions that could reach the market. So there is an incredible capability of a scientist to create knowledge, but there is also some issues that do not permit the transformation of the knowledge in solutions. And the reason why it's so complex is that we are all studying biological organisms. If you are working in healthcare, a human, if you are working in environment, really complex ecosystem. But the fact that we are targeting issues that are embedded in biological organisms is justifying the difficulties that we have, not only from a scientific point of view, but also from a regulatory and market and healthcare practice point of view. And such difficulties could be synthesized in the difficulties to link two completely different bridges. The science side, we are trained to increase the human knowledge. So from a certain point of view, we are not so interested in understanding and working on what is happening after the knowledge creation, and the operational side, where is more important the capability to bring a solution on the market and on the organism that has an issue, sometimes a patient, then to continue to increase the human knowledge stock. Obviously, the two extreme positions are both wrong. The scientist has to take care of the progress of the knowledge, and who is working at operational level needs an increased stock of knowledge to be able to improve the quality and efficacy of the solution that is able to develop. And this is the reason why the creativity that is not taught in scientific faculties, unfortunately, has a special role. The Creativity Act is exactly the moment when a scientist is able to identify a practical use of their knowledge. The practical use is not simply what is commonly inserted in scientific article. One sentence at the end of the article, the scientific discoveries that I made and that I tested could be a component of a future drug. The Creativity Act is also tackling the capability to transform the knowledge in a solution, and is the starting point to identify the path that has to be completely realized to be able to bring to a patient the scientific discovery. And such path, the innovation path, is quite complex, as it's different depending on the scientific knowledge that we would like to transform in an innovation. There is the incremental innovation. This is let's say, the most common innovation that we have. We are adding piece of knowledge to already existing knowledge, and such piece of knowledge is transformed in incremental innovation in products. There is the progressive innovation, where we are moving from one level of development to another level of development. We will pass it through different layers. There is the radical innovation, that's probably the most interesting innovation, where we are able to make rule-breaking discoveries. The DNA, the double DNA helix, or the use of antibody as therapeutics. Such radical innovation is the radical innovation where we have to focus. If we have to speak about the creation of startups also as employability solution. Obviously, not all the scientific discoveries could be used to create a company. There is a process that is well known in technology transfer offices, that is the technology evaluation. The technology evaluation is only partially based on scientific excellence. In reality, it's more based on the capability to transform the scientific excellence in a product, in a solution. So some of the aspects that usually scientists are not covering, the future use, the regulatory feasibility, the risk, the cost, the performances, the stakeholder concern, are all analyzed in order to understand if the scientific discovery could be used to set up companies. Obviously, there is a direct link between the technology evaluation and the capability to file a patent. A patent is a way to protect the idea against the possibility that other will create exactly the same product. Obviously, the patent is leaving the freedom for scientists to continue to work on knowledge, but at the same time are blocking other companies or other scientists that would like to create a companies to replicate the idea. The entrepreneurial process that starts after that the technology evaluation is positive is quite standardized. You identify the opportunity, you evaluate the opportunity, and you transform your evaluation in money, the expected economic value. You develop the business plan, and the speaker that presented before me explained the role of the business plan. You assemble resources, you raise money, because it's unfortunately in healthcare is absolutely expensive to do such process. You create a company, and at the end, if you are lucky, you will have economic value, real economic value, not perspective economic value, or through an exit, another company will buy you, or another investor will invest in the company, or through the capability to sell your solution directly to the final user or to an intermediate user, and or through the capability to have profits, maybe selling knowledge or selling services. To reach such stage, you need some prerequisites. The first one for a scientist, it's easy from a scientific point of view, competency. The scientists are expert in their field, but they are not always expert in managerial field, in the capability to create a company that is a vehicle, a profit-oriented vehicle. So the capability to identify the weakness of a scientist and the capability to find a solution for such weakness is one of the prerequisites that every startup has to have. The second is the capability to build a network. You cannot create a startup alone. It's impossible. You need partner, you need investor, you need colleague, and the capability to create a network. And some of our speakers already outlined the role of social network in order to position themselves on the market. It's key to be able to go out of the comfort zone of their labs or of their scientific sector. The capability to create a network is the capability that permits to a business idea to be transformed in a startup. And you have to have a vision. The vision is quite a strange concept. It's not simply the idea of a use of your scientific knowledge as a solution. It's something more. It's the vision about how the world could change after that you use your scientific knowledge to create a solution. It's something that is really ambitious, and startups, particularly in life science, have to be ambitious to be attractive. And you have to have a clear perspective about the market concept and the exchange perception that you have. The market concept will drive your idea along all the development process of the solution. Obviously, more you are aware about the concept of market, the more you will be able to use all the opportunities that are present at worldwide level in order to nurture your idea and to make possible the transformation of your idea in a solution. The market concept, it's also driving another element that you have to be aware, the exchange. You are always exchanging something. And the first thing that you can exchange and you can sell is your idea. One of my friends that is working in the American venture capital field, it's always explaining me the cake slice paradigm. When you have a wonderful idea, you have a cake. And you have to start to divide the cake in different slices, because every slices that you are giving away has a feedback effect, positive feedback effect on your idea. At the beginning, you will find another partner to set up the company, one slice. You will identify some investors, other slice, and your slice will be smaller and smaller. But the total value of the cake at the beginning will be lower than the value of a small slice of a startup that is growing. And this is exactly what you have to keep in your mind. I have to share what I have in order to make possible for my idea to reach the market as soon as possible. And the sharing approach has to be a driver in your development. Obviously, sharing doesn't mean that you have to make gifts of your knowledge. Sharing means that you have to evaluate exactly the partner that you have to find and what you can offer to the partner, because this is the only way to grow, it's the only way to attract money. And this is important because sustainability has to be your mantra. There is two levels of sustainability that have to be evaluated. The first one is what I call the ethical level. We are in a capitalistic system. This is not our choice, but we are living in such system. In the capitalistic system, you have to be able to attract resources to be able to grow. And this is also for scientific discoveries. Science needs financial resources. And the only way for science to obtain financial resources is to activate a virtuous circle that move from knowledge, transform the knowledge in innovation, transform the innovation in economic growth, and economic growth is creating both new job places, and it means taxes, and growth for already existing companies. It means another time taxes, and such taxes will be transformed in financing of basic research activities. Such approach has to also to drive the approach of development of your company. Your company is exactly the vehicle that is not conceived to demonstrate that science is good. It's conceived to demonstrate to be able to fulfill a need, and if it's able to fulfill the need, is able to stimulate economic growth. Obviously, as a byproducts, it will create job places for you that are the entrepreneur, and for your colleague that will be hired during the development of the company. And such element has to be absolutely evaluated when you decide if you would like to create a company or not. A company is not a one guy game. It's a team game. You have to create a team, and creating a team, you will be surrounded by partner, colleagues, friends, and consultants. As Zcube, we are exactly following that approach. The cartoon that you are seeing is the synthesis of the accelerator initiative that we realized in 2020. It was quite a difficult period because we were obliged to virtualize all the approach, and for 2020, we choose to focus on digital health exactly to, let's say, to overcome all the issues that were provoked by the pandemic. But what was interesting is that all the elements and the value that I outlined were used to evaluate and to support the 8 startups that has been identified. There are not only Italian startups, we have startups coming from Spain, Portugal, Canada, and so on. And what was interesting is that at least in 5 cases over 8, the startups were the result of scientific discovery at universities, and the entrepreneurs was absolutely young scientists that decided to change their career perspective, targeting the creation of a startups. Thank you really much.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio. Really very interesting. We will discuss some of the points that you explained so clearly during the discussion. But now it's a pleasure to give the floor to Valentina Menozzi, who is a CTO and co-founder of Prometheus, and which is an Italian startup. And she graduated in medical, pharmaceutical, and veterinary biotechnologies at the University of Parma in Italy. And she had experiences in R&D departments of public and private institutes like University of Parma, University of Lausanne, and also Chiesi, a pharmaceutical company in Italy. And she will give a talk on Prometheus, story of an Italian startup from research to entrepreneurship. And Valentina, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for the invitation and for the presentation. I'm going to share my screen to show you the slides. Okay. So, as it was said before, I'm Valentina Menozzi. I'm the CTO of Prometheus, and today I will talk a bit about the main steps and the main issues in building a startup using the story of my company as a case history. So starting from the importance of building the right team to develop your idea into a company, arriving to raising funds and also creating a network around your company, as also other presentations said before me. So just to give you an idea of the story of the company, I will talk a bit and I will introduce a bit about Prometheus. Prometheus was founded in 2017 by me and my other two colleagues. It's a medtech company, so we work in the field of medical devices for regenerative medicine, and in particular with the application on wound care. And we are settled in Mirandola, which is one of the most important Italian biomedical districts. So the choice of the headquarters was really focused on being in the right environment to follow and to have a direct connection also with both with customers, but also with suppliers. So talking about the team and the co-founders of the company, as I told you before, we were just three at the beginning of the story of the startup. We were all biotechnologists, but with different kind of specialization. I was focused on the molecular biology, while my colleague Alice was more focused on biomaterials and 3D bioprinting. And Ricardo was more interested in engineering, 3D printing, the 3D printers design, and also the automation of machines for medical use. However, as you can see, during the time and during the development of the startup, which has now 3 years, we changed a bit our backgrounds and also our roles inside the startup, just to fill the gaps that we had inside the startup. Also trying to collect new information and new knowledges and know-how through the network and also the advisor that we were able to build during the time. In particular, Ricardo today is the project manager and also the responsible of the supply chain, so the relationship with the suppliers, but also with investors, because he mainly manages all the fundraising strategy, so all the relationship with investors, business angels, and private funds. Alice is mainly in charge of the business strategy and the commercial network for the marketing of our product, but also for the financial and economic planning, which is very important. And for me, one of the main aspects in a startup is to have someone in your team that is able to manage both the technical and scientific aspects of your project, but also the financial ones, to have a direct connection and collaboration with external financial consultants. But to make good assumption, you have to know very well your product and your project. So it's really important to have someone in your team knowing and having knowledges on both aspects, the financial one, but also the technical one. And then I manage mainly the R&D part, so the collaborations and the relationships with private and public R&D departments, with universities, for example. But mainly I'm now focusing on the regulatory pathway for the certification of our medical devices, especially in this period and in this time when we have the new regulation that will take place in May of this year. So I'm mainly studying all those aspects to certify our medical device. And I also manage all the IP strategy, so the definition of patents, obviously in collaboration with the external legal consultant. So as you can see, for me, the two main aspects in building a team at the beginning of the startup is obviously to have trust in your colleagues, because at the beginning you have few money and few people, and you have a lot of work to do and also a lot of study to do. So you can't double check the work of the others. So it is very important to have someone to work with trust. And flexibility is another important point, because as you can see, you have to mainly fill a lot of holes and gaps in the startup life. So you have to be open and also interested in acquiring new knowledges and into managing different aspects from the one of the R&D from which you came from. So when we built the startup, obviously we had that technology in our background, in our knowledges, and also we had an idea of the product. But I think that one important advice for a startup is to not fall in love with your product, because it will change a million times during your lifestyle. So it's really important to understand your technology, but also to understand that this technology must be translated into a product, and this product must be translated into a business. And all this process is really difficult to do, and you have to be open to change what you have in the R&D phase, to adapt it to, for example, the regulatory pathway, but also to the needs of the market. So for this reason, I'm showing you our very first slide that we built for our first acceleration program. At the beginning, our mission was to create and to sell 3D bioprinters able to print both cells and biopolymers to create 3D artificial tissues for drug testing or for transplantation. But then our mission changed a lot, thanks to the collaboration and also the discussions with many advisors and supporters of the company, because we understood that the market of 3D printers is really limited. So we tried to understand how to translate our background and our know-how on 3D printing into something that was more easy to exploit under a business point of view. And from this thinking, we built the new product, which is Ematic. It is a bioabsorbable patch for wound care, combining patient's blood derivative with biomaterials, and those biomaterials are obtained and created through 3D printing. So we decided to use 3D printers not as our product, but as our manufacturing assets to create products that we will be sent to sell to our interested customers. So in this way, we have many kinds, we have many consumables and disposables that we can sell to the final customer, and we can keep the connection with the customer and not just selling a machine and never seeing your customer again. Just a bit more about the product. The bioabsorbable patch is able to reduce the healing times of difficult to heal wounds by 50%. Without scars or side effects. It is completely bioabsorbable, and it also owns antimicrobial activities, so it is able to reduce the risk of infections in difficult to heal wounds. And the patch is created by the clinician or the hospital through our automated device that is able to extract the active molecules from the blood of the patient, combining them with biomaterials. As you can see, we are still selling a machine, but the business model is very different. We don't only sell the machine, but we sell also the disposable kit containing the bioabsorbable materials. So the business model is really similar to the one of Nespresso. We give for free the machine, and then we have the highest margins on the disposable kits. So we are able to maintain the contact and the link with the final customer. Moreover, the machine was designed not only to create this specific product, but also a portfolio of products. In this way, you can, with only one machine, connect with your customer with a portfolio of products. So once you define your technology and you are able to translate your technology into a product, it's very important to translate your product into a business. And to do this, you have to collect validations on both under a technical point of view, but also under a business point of view. So at first, what we did was to demonstrate the proof of concept of our product, so that Ematic was efficient, but that it was also safe for the application. And it's very difficult to do this, especially for medical devices like the one we propose, because it is a medical device of class 3. So before to obtain in vivo data, so data on patients, you have to wait a lot of time for preclinical and clinical testing. So what we decided to do was to start from the veterinary market on animals, treating wounds on animals, because the medical devices are not well and or fully regulated under the veterinary field. So you don't need any kind of regulatory pathway or certification to start to apply your product on animals or to start to sell the product on animals. In fact, we are ready on the veterinary market since February 2020. So this is one an example of the demonstration of the efficacy of the product. As you can see, with one application of the patch, the wound was completely closed after 20 days without scars, and also with the reappearance of the fur of the animal. And collecting those data is really important, not only to be yourself more sure and confident about your product, but also to show your data and to have more value when you go to talk to investors, but also with your future customers. So with those data, you can go to the investors and say, look, I already have the data on the efficacy and on the safety of the product. So I can say that my product works and that it is better than the one of competitors. And the same you can do with your future customers. So you can go to doctors and you can attract your future customers already with those data and with those proof of concept. Once you have the clinical or technical validation of the product, obviously you have to validate your business. So you have to understand in which kind of market you are filling, and in particular in which segment you are filling and you are classified. For example, Ematic is filling to the sector of advanced therapies. But you don't have to understand only how is worth your market, but how is it growing, because faster is growing your market, easier and faster will be to convince your final customer, because it means that there's really a gap and a hole that you can fill in the market with your product. Then you also have to know better your market, the value that you collected, just making an in-depth analysis of where are your customer, who is your target customer. And also, this is very important also to make assumption on your sales, on your future revenues, and also to make assumptions on the value of your product and your company. And most important of all, you have to meet your market. So you have to meet your final customers, but just at the beginning of your product. So when you still have your technology and you don't have a final and designed product, because you're in time to make changes in relation to the feedback that you collect from your final customers. And especially in a field like the one of medical devices, it's important to make those changes at the beginning of the regulatory pathway and not at the end, because otherwise you will lose a lot of money and a lot of time. So it's very important to meet them at the beginning of the process. And then obviously you have to find money to finance the whole project. In particular, we raised our first investments in 2018 to finance the development of the prototype and to collect the data on the veterinary market, and also to go to the veterinary market. But actually we are right now still in fundraising, because the lifetime of a startup is always full of round of investments. So at the beginning you have to understand your milestones, and giving them also a timeline and also the related costs to understand how much time do you need to reach those milestones, and also how much money do you need to reach those milestones. And once you do that, you have your financial need. For example, our financial need right now is 1.9 million that we are raising for the preclinical step, and so for the preclinical pathway of the company. But it's important for you to have clear the whole financial need that your company has to bring your product finally on the market, just to know which kind of round of investment, how many round of investment do you need to perform, and so how many shares of your company you will lose and you are willing to lose. Then obviously it's important to have a good financial strategy. There are not only equity investment, but also non-dilutive funds. For example, there are a lot of European grants, like the old design instrument that is now the IEC accelerator pilot and the new EAC accelerator instrument, which are very interesting because they are able to finance a huge amount of money, up to also 2 million euros, or for highest TRL of development of your product, but you can also have lower TRL, so readiness level of your product, like with the Pathfinder instrument and so on. And in particular, for this round of investment, we decided to merge those two financial strategies using a national grant here in Italy, which is a non-dilutive fund. Probably you will have one also in your country. But we also have equity investment carrying out in this round of investment by business angels, private investors, but also companies that will bring not only money, but also know-how, competencies, and network to the company to increase the capabilities and also the possibility to scale up the business. And we are also starting an equity crowdfunding campaign the 4th of February. The equity crowdfunding is really interesting instrument if you need to raise a small amount of money in a small amount of time. So, for example, we are looking for 900k euros as private investments, but we already have a pre-commitment of 600k euros. So we are looking for the remaining 300 on the platform, which is a good amount of money that you can raise on a platform for equity crowdfunding. The last important thing is the network. As the other speaker said before, it's really important to build a good network and to collect stakeholders, because it's impossible for you to develop and to scale up your startup with only your small team of co-founders. So for this reason, we implemented the team with the key roles, for example, in marketing and communication, which is a very important aspect for a startup which still not has a brand. And also with Dr. Bellezza, who has a 30 years experience in medical device, and he will be the new CSO, so clinical manager of the company, covering the aspects both under the clinical point of view, but also under the commercial point of view. And it's important to fill the gaps and to fill the holes in your team, also with people who has a long history in building startups with success, obviously, but also in working in this specific field of medical devices and clinical applications. And one important instrument also to collect those figures and those key roles is the work for equity, which is an interesting instrument that you need to consider and to take into consideration when you build a startup. Obviously, the advisory board is very important, such as also the clinical board, which are very important to obviously to fill the gaps still, or to cover the knowledges that you don't have. And also the collaboration with incubators and accelerators are very important, also with the universities. For the technical point of view, we are in collaboration with many universities in Italy, and we are also incubated, for example, by the Technopole in Mirandola for the biomedical district, but also by the Bioindustry Park in Turin, who is offering us many free of charge or discounted services for legal advice, or for building a network in the medical device field. So thank you for your time and for the attention. My presentation is over. I would be glad to...
Thank you, Valentina, for this excellent presentation. Really very, very interesting. So now we open the discussion. I don't know if Josse, would you like to start with a question for the panel?
Yeah, I would like to have a question for Lieven. What are the advantages and disadvantages of creating a one-person company versus being an independent freelance advisor?
That's a very good question. The difference is, if you are just an independent freelancer, you're completely liable for everything you do. So if you have a company, you have limited liability. It means if you have a lawsuit, you're only responsible for the amount of money which is present in your company and not your own money. So it's a defense on that. Also, in my first slide, I indicated money in, money out. Your company can act as a buffer. So if you have a good year and you gain a lot of money, or you have a bad year, you gain a lot of money. In the case you have a company, you have a kind of buffer, yeah. So you can buffer the gainings which you go to yourself, yeah. So if you have in the first year, I just say an imaginary number 100,000, yeah. In the second year, 0, yeah. If you keep that money in your company, you can pay yourself every year 50,000, yeah, which is a big difference when you have to pay your taxes, yeah. If you have to pay your taxes on 100,000, you pay a lot more, yeah, because taxes are incremental than when you pay twice taxes on 50,000. Yeah, that's why I created my own one person. It's in fact two persons company. Yeah, it's for a tax reason, but it's also for liability reason.
Okay. Where can you find help for such a one-person company to start it? Can you find help also from incubators, or are they more for multi-staff companies?
The incubators are more for multi-staff companies. Let's put it that way. Yeah, but if you have a good accountant, he will be able to help you and indicate how you have to start your own company, which can be a 2 or 1 person company.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. There was a question in the chat from Ruben related to one part of the question I think has been already answered now. The other one was related to the aim of the company. Ruben is asking if a software or let's say the formation of employees could be also one of the goals of the company.
Oh yes, yes, you can do with your company whatever you want as long as you have a focus what you're going to do. Yeah.
Thank you. One general question for the panel. I think the panel has been really interesting because we saw different cases. Of course, Lieven, we understood that you created your company at the later stage in your career. I mean, you have been a successful employee for big pharma companies, so you learned a lot, and then you wanted to put into practice, what you learned, etc. And then we saw Valentina on the other side. She's very young and very successful, and she started from a very early stage. So, in general, what is the opinion of the panel? Is it a good idea to try to start a company very early in your career, in your life, or maybe wait a bit and do something else before? So I don't know if you can comment on that.
Valentina, you first or me first?
Oh, you can go first, sir.
Well, in my case, the advantage is if you want to do consultancy, you cannot do consultancy when you come from university. Yeah. So in my case, doing consultancy, then you need 20 years of experience. Yeah, you need to have a network and you need to know what's happening. Yeah, because nobody is going to pay someone who comes from university to give advice on problems which are occurring in industry. Yeah, I think when you're young and start your own company, the situation is different. Because then you start a company from scratch and you don't need all that experience like I needed to do my company. So it depends on what type of company you want to do, which experience you need, and which energy level you need, yeah, etc., and whether you want to grow or not. So I think the company from Valentina and from myself are totally different companies. Yeah, there's a total different focus. It's a good question, but Valentina, please feel free to add what you think.
Yeah, well, I agree with you because obviously starting earlier, you don't have a network because you just coming out from the university, and this is really important and an important aspect because at the beginning you have a lot of things you need to learn first than to do. So you need to build a network, you need to also have conversation and also to have link to other people. And usually it's not easy because usually you get in contact with people who don't have an experience about building a startup, but just having a role in a big company. And those are two very difficult fields. So you need to find your key person just to understand how to build the startup and how to, well, I've said it hundreds of times, but to fill the gaps that you have, because at the beginning, for example, we were only 3 people coming from the university. So obviously we had a lot of things to learn both under economical point of view, the business point of view. And so this is a very difficult part, but the interesting part for me is maybe when you are at the beginning, you are more able to change your mindset easily, you know, so you want to learn, you want to be challenged, you are free, for example, to move, just to say one thing, you are free to move if you feel that your good environment is in another place or in another countries where there are more helps for startups and so on, you can do that. So I don't know, yes, it's more difficult, but it's also more challenging under a good point of view for me.
Well, Valentina, did you or do you feel that academia could do more to prepare young graduates for entrepreneurship?
Yeah, certainly, because especially I will give you what I learned in Italy, what is the situation in Italy, because under the academic point of view or in the university, I've never heard talking about startups or creating a business or creating a product from the research. The only thing we usually talk about is how to write a scientific paper, how to submit the scientific paper, but not how to translate the data of the scientific paper into a product. So it's really important maybe to have this translation from only R&D to business, maybe creating more events or connection between incubators and accelerator with the universities.
Thank you. I take the criticism as an Italian professor. We have to say that we try our best, but that's not easy. I mean, we try to do that actually a little bit more at the level of PhD. So there are courses for entrepreneurship more for PhD, because in the end, this is always the problem. I mean, the knowledge also that the students, you know, have to learn in the bachelor and master is so much that it's not easy to have space for additional. So I'm one of the ones, you know, in favor of these activities. But let's say if you give some credits to these activities, you have to take them out of something else. So a little bit less immunology, a little bit less biochemistry, so that's always the point. I mean, you cannot just add, you know, on top of the curriculum new thing. But it's a good point. And I think, Valentina, also you come from an environment. I visited the park in Mirandola. I mean, you come from the University of Parma. So I think especially your environment, I would say, is very good in Italy, and really at the European level is one of the best. So in your case, I think you're also in a good position. There are areas, I think, of Europe, including Italy, a little bit less prepared for that. Maybe S.r.l, Professor Sousa, would you like to also add anything, or do you have any question for the panel?
Yes, I have a few small questions, because this session was so inspiring. These three speakers, I would like to thank them because they shared many tips of their startups and companies. So valuable information they shared with the young professionals and with us. I wish I was maybe younger, but Leuven said, I'm not late, so obviously I had some tips for my future. What do you think, Luciano?
Okay,
there are so many good tips. Well, the major thing is maybe the science part is easier for us as a pharmacist or the related jobs or professions. For me, the marketing strategies are the difficult part. So Leuven said he doesn't use an computer for marketing.
No? I use. I don't have a website.
A website, sorry. But the website, for me, without a website, it's like you are invisible. So how you manage?
But that's on purpose, otherwise I have too much work. Yeah?
Yes, I would like to steal some of your work, so you have to be visible on the website. So how you manage your marketing strategies? Do you take advices or use your years of experience? What is your strategy, Leuven, and of course the other speakers?
Well, in my case, my network is that big at this moment, yeah, that having a website has no added value anymore. But that's my case, because the first time my site was typically you start with a website, yeah. because you would like that people know who you are. Yeah. But if I do that, I'm overwhelmed. Yeah? I'm already now overwhelmed. Yeah? And it's a different case when you are really young and start up. Yeah, you need a lot of visibility. And one of the speakers told about that. Yeah, visibility is important. For me, visibility is not important anymore. I want to become a little bit invisible. Yeah, yeah, because otherwise it's too much. Yeah.
True. True. Yeah. What about Valentina? In your case, how you manage?
Well, for us, visibility is very important, especially when you have to raise investment, because as I said before, you don't have a network of investors, so the visibility is very important for the increasing of the capital, for example. I mean, for the marketing strategy, there's not a real right answer, because for me, it really depends on your customers and on your market. For example, we do a lot of online marketing with the SEO strategy, with the website, with also newsletters and scientific blogs. Yeah, also scientific webinars or blogs for also to introduce the customer to our kind of innovation, because we always talk about innovation. So usually the market is not fully or completely ready for the innovation. So you have also to transmit the scientific information. But I was saying there's not the right answer, because, for example, for the veterinary market, veterinarians are not really well represented online. So the online activities must be targeted to the presence of your customer on the market. For the vet part, we mainly connect directly with the customers, so for example, by phone or through LinkedIn, for example, which is very better than the website to convert the customers. The sales that we made last year were all converted through LinkedIn or through calls, because we had the commercials not going anywhere because of the pandemic, so we needed to start with the online strategy. But I think the online strategy and the marketing strategy must be like suited with the features of your customer.
Thank you. We are a bit late, but I mean, it's been so interesting that I think it's good to continue for a couple of more minutes. I want to ask Fabrizio, since you have such a good experience in the field for a long time, I mean, putting yourself in the shoes of a young person in the pharma and biomedical sector, which ideas, I mean, I know it's not an easy question to answer, but in general, which are the fields that you would feel that could be more promising in the next few years? Because we listened today to very interesting ideas. You know, the product of Valentina is so successful, digital health, you know, devices, etc. So as a young person today, in which direction would you go?
We are in a strange society that became older and older, so aging and all the diseases related to aging, chronic diseases, are of interest in perspective. This morning I just read an article about 10 startups that in Europe are targeting all the aging problem, targeting aging as a disease. And aging is not a disease in reality. The technology that you use to target such general therapeutic area could be different. The market is influenced by the fashion of one specific technology or scientific discovery, but is more influenced by the capability of such technology to solve the problem. So there is not a specific technology, because technologies are changing. Now we have a CRISPR-Cas9, tomorrow we will have I don't know what, because science is progressing. It's more important to identify a need that is not fulfilled or is fulfilled in a not perfect way. Aging, chronic diseases, metabolic diseases, neurodegenerative diseases are the usual suspect. Cancer is a little bit an overcrowded area from a startup point of view. because a lot of companies are working and developing solutions, but if you have a good idea, why not? If we move to other application of biotech, obviously environmental impact, it's a good general sector to target, particularly if you are able to work on short-term result and not long-term result, because investors are quite cynic from that point of view. The last point is process innovation in biotech. Biotech has such a wonderful capability to lower cost and increase efficiency and efficacy of production processes. And this is true both for pharma production, for energy production, for material production. This is absolutely an interesting field that arrives up to agriculture, where artificial meat or meat that is produced in a lab, it's now one of the most interesting sectors from an investor point of view, because the market is huge, is the word. Returning a little bit to healthcare, I think that the real challenge in the future will be the creation of combined products. Let's say products that mix biotech with digital health, with I don't know what. And we have already some interesting example of the capability of combined product to fulfill a needs. There is a product in multiple sclerosis, many products in multiple sclerosis that are the smart sum of a chemical entity, of a drug delivery system that in reality is a computer, of a logistic system that permit to every patient to receive at home consumables. And what is approved, what is paid is the smart sum of the three components. To translate, in other words, we will need more multidisciplinarity in the solutions that are developed, that will be developed in the future.
Thank you very much. I think we really need to close. Josse, if you agree, we will close here the webinar. It's been really very interesting. Thank you very much to the three speakers of this last session for the excellent talks. Thank you very much also to Professor Susan for being with us today. To Ruben Viegas, Vice President of EPSA. And of course, thank you very much to my co-chair, Josse. And see you soon online. Please look at the UNICA webinar. We will have the fourth webinar probably in March. We already have some contacts with some other possible speakers. And so we will continue this endeavor. Please disseminate also as much as possible this initiative. We want really to improve this contact between academia and industry that sometimes is lacking. As Valentina said, sometimes, you study at university and you don't have this information. But on the contrary, sometimes we try to disseminate information and students maybe are so busy studying their exams so they don't participate in web. So it's not easy also from the other side, but we are trying our best to create a good community, to disseminate this information. Again, thank you very much to all of you and see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.